you a short story. This happened to me about 2 years ago. I live in Amsterdam, right? And in Amsterdam, if you want to get an apartment right now, it could take you from a month to at least 3 months because there's currently housing crisis. I was speaking to a friend of mine, and it's similar here in London. I figured a lot of you relate to this because it's a struggle to find an apartment. And there was actually a specific apartment I wanted to get 2 years ago. It's like a building complex, very fancy, and not in the city center, but in a very perfect location. So I was looking at getting that apartment. So what happened was I went to the website, but unfortunately, all of it were occupied. And I figured, what would I do? The website currently has a thing where every week, if there is an available apartment, they would update it. And what happens is the get notified button changes to available. So what I did was every week on Wednesday at 12 p.m., which is when they update the website, I would go and refresh it. And I did this for 1 month. So I'd go every week, refresh it. Is there an apartment? No. And I do that every time. I even set an alarm. And then finally, after a month, I got an apartment, right? Why am I sharing this story? It just made sense. I was making this talk and I figured if I had known at the time, I would have automated that task. And it would save me a lot of time. It would save me a lot of, because every time I go and I check and I don't see the available button, I'm always pissed because I put in a lot of work going to check it. But how can I solve this problem with browser automation? I built a very short proof of concept where what I'm doing is I'm using the rendering API. I'll tell you what that is, but essentially is a tool from Cloudflare that allows you to automate browser tags. The underlying technology uses Puppeteer, which is a way for you to run browser tags in a headless mode. You have access to something called the browser. You can do things like open a new tab within your code, open a new tab, navigate to a specific part of a website, take a screenshot, make a PDF, and so on. So in this code, what am I doing? This is a Cloudflare Workers function. And what I did was I tried to navigate to the website. Let me see if I can highlight it. Okay. I tried to navigate to the website, and then I am checking if there is actually an available apartment, right? And once I do that, how I was able to do that, I inspected the page. I was able to get the class for the specific button. And then I take a screenshot of that, send it to my email, also notify me if there is an available apartment. You can even take this further by writing a cron job that will do this for you every hour, right? So this was, if I had known at the time, this was how I would have solved the problem for me. And the funny story is, I have a friend that actually did this. He didn't use rendering API, but he did this. He wrote a script that would check the website and got an apartment in 2 hours, right? So this is just something I feel like, is a very good example of how you as a developer can actually use the tools that you use for your job for even things that could help you in your personal life. So moving on, what is Cloudflare Workers? Is anyone here familiar with Cloudflare Workers? Okay, that's a good number, I'll say. So Cloudflare Workers is a platform that provides you with a serverless environment where you can run code, JavaScript, TypeScript, Rust, and more recently, very soon, Python. And what I think the biggest part of this is that all the infrastructure is given to the platform. So you don't have to set up any servers. You don't have to manage any servers. You just write code and ship it, right? So this is an example Cloudflare Workers script. I already showed you one from my previous proof of concept, but basically what this is doing is it exports a default function, and then I'm using fetch to make a request, returning data about this meetup, right? So you can do different things with a worker script. This is written in just plain JavaScript, but you can also write it in TypeScript. And what I'm doing then after creating the JSON object for the meetup, I'm then returning it as JSON back to the browser, right? So this is what you would typically work with if you're using Cloudflare Workers. Now, moving on to browser rendering API, what is it? So I already mentioned Puppeteer, I mentioned a few other things, but browser rendering API is a tool that allows you as developers to programmatically control and interact with a headless browser instance. And that enables you to create automation flows for your applications and products. If you've ever explored browser automation, you possibly have heard about Puppeteer. Is anyone familiar with Puppeteer? Okay, that's a good number too. That's good. So Puppeteer is a Node.js library that provides you with an abstraction of something called the Chrome DevTools protocol, which essentially is what is powering your Chromium, Chrome browsers, and Firefox. So Puppeteer runs in Node.js. It also runs in headless mode by default, but you can always, set it up to run a full Chrome or Chromium within your application. The interesting thing here is that Workers browser rendering, I said I'll call it rendering API because I don't want to miss my word. So the rendering API is kind of built with Puppeteer and Workers. So we currently use the Chrome DevTools protocol to allow you instrument, inspect, debug your application, and many projects currently use this. So the Puppeteer library currently use the DevTools protocols. Workers rendering API also uses the DevTools protocol. So at Cloudflare, what we did is, because Puppeteer is open source, so we forked a version of that and then patched it to connect to our Workers runtime. You might be wondering, why do you have to use this when you can actually use Puppeteer? The difference being is Puppeteer runs in the Node.js runtime. Meanwhile, Cloudflare Workers has its own runtime, right? And you can actually use Puppeteer within your Worker script. So we're enabling developers to be able to do similar things that they can do with Puppeteer within their Worker script. And the great thing is that all the APIs that Puppeteer currently have, the Workers browser rendering API also has it. So you can do exactly the same thing with, if you're familiar with Puppeteer, it's not a lot of hassle to learn and use the rendering API within your application. So why did we build this new tool, right? This came from actually a need within our team at Cloudflare. A lot of teams were looking to actually automate tasks that they wanted to do within their team. Like a very common use case that I've seen is automated screenshots. Maybe they want to take screenshots of a specific page, send it to like different people's email, a specific team within Cloudflare called the Radar team. Cloudflare Radar is a website where you can go to check like internet trends and so on. They recently launched a feature called URL Scanner. I need water, sorry. It's here. They launched a feature called URL Scanner. So what the URL Scanner does is when you enter a URL, it goes to the specific website, takes a screenshot of it. So the process of going to a website, take a screenshot of it is using the Workers browser rendering API. So that's how we actually came about using this tool, but we also thought a lot of people outside of our teams, outside of Cloudflare would find this helpful. So we decided to also make it open for everyone to use. So how does it work? Yeah, the rendering API combines the power of Workers and something called the remote browser isolation. Remote browser isolation essentially means that your browser is running in isolation mode where you're not actually interacting with the browser from the client, but is running in a remote environment. So what we did is we wrapped the open source Puppeteer library that we got so that it works within our Workers runtime. So when you make a request within your Worker script, a request is sent to create a new browser. I'll show you an example of how that works. And what then happens is the browser is returned. The connection between the browser and Cloudflare Workers, they both use WebSocket connections. So once a WebSocket connection is established, our browser API that we built, which is the thing you see in the middle, handles all the communication between the Worker script and the browser session. So in order to use this, we also have a few steps for you to get started with. Within a Cloudflare worker script, we have a configuration file called Wrangler. And if you would like to use the workers rendering API within your script, all you need to do is set up two things. You need to add a browser binding. So basically a binding allows your worker script interacts with different resources. In this case, interacts with the rendering API. So you have to set a binding and give it a string, which I'm calling my browser. You also have to set up a compatibility flag. Remember I mentioned that this is a fork of Puppeteer, which runs in Node.js. So you need to set up a compatibility flag in order for it to work. And then this is an example of how I'm using it to create a new blank page. So I'm importing the library. You need to install the library. It's at Cloudflare/Puppeteer. And then after that, in order for me to launch a browser and a new page, I'm running Puppeteer.launch and then passing the binding that I created just so that I'm able to access the different APIs that comes with browser. For example, open a new tab, take a screenshot, make a PDF, and so on and so forth. Yeah, Cloudflare Puppeteer, the library in itself is also open source. So if you want to see what we are doing or what we are doing to change, things behind the scenes under the hood, you can also check it out on GitHub. So what are some cool use cases? What are some cool use cases of the browser rendering API? I mentioned one already, which is taking screenshots of pages. You can also use it to generate PDF from a web page. You can use it to write end-to-end tests for your applications. You can also use it to gather page load performance metrics. All of this, I'll show you examples of how I was able to build small demos to show you how it works. So let me show you some examples. The first one I'll show you is how to use the rendering API to take a screenshot and then save the screenshot in Cloudflare R2. So Cloudflare R2 is an object storage offering that we currently have. So when you think of S3, the Cloudflare version is R2. So what I want to do is I want to create a script that I would be able to navigate to a website, pass it a URL, it takes a screenshot, I take the image and I save it to R2. So what I have here is the code. It's quite long, but I'll try to navigate through it. So I'm installing Puppeteer from the top, and then I added a few libraries just to help me sanitize the URL, the image name I want to store in R2. And then where the main part of the code is from line 17, where I'm launching a browser, and then I'm navigating to a specific URL that I intend to pass in as a query parameter. And then I'm taking a screenshot. So the rendering API exposes the APIs from Puppet that's the DevTools protocol gives you. So one of that is screenshot. So page.screenshot actually takes a screenshot. Page.pdf takes a PDF. So after that, then I'm sanitizing the image, passing in the title of the web page, and then uploading it to R2. So in order for me to upload an image to R2, I have to create a bucket, which I can use a tool called Wrangler, our command line to do that. And then after that, I am returning the image that I've stored in Cloudflare R2 back to my browser. So I'll quickly show you an example of this demo. Hopefully it works. Here we go. So I already wrote the code for this and I deployed it, and this is it. So if I pass in a URL here, there's an example there already. Let me use my website. So okay, let's see if this works. So what happens, it takes a screenshot, saves it to R2, then I'm returning the image stored in R2 back to the browser. And fingers crossed. Oops. Okay. I'll just go back and put HTTPS. Hopefully that helps. Maybe it's not recognizing it as a URL. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's try this.
Well, you got good error handling.
Okay, it works. Okay, so that's an example of how you can take a screenshot. I'm going to go ahead and show you another demo. So the next demo I want to show you is using durable objects to persist browser sessions. So something you should know right now, there is like a limit to the rendering API where you can only have 2 browser sessions running per minute and 2 concurrent browser per account. But what if you want to do a task that's extending past the 60 seconds? You can use durable objects, which is a way to store states to extend the limits a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I want to do the same thing that I did with the screenshot, but I want to take an image of the website in different viewports. So in mobile, in desktop, and so on. And then package it into a folder and upload to R2. So that would make like multiple round trips. So it will take 3 screenshots, which will extend past the 60 minutes. So I'm trying to use durable object to extend the time by 10 seconds. So that would enable me kind of pass the limit by a few seconds. But in the future, we are working on extending the limit so you don't have to go through this path. So for this one, I will try to do the demo, but I don't have it set up. So I'll move on to the next demo. The next demo I'd like to show you is how to generate a PDF from a web page. To generate a PDF, very similar to the screenshot, I just need to change the, where's it now? On this line, await page.pdf instead of page.screenshot, and then I can pass in some options. So instead of A4, I want it to be A3. So something else I'm doing here is in the actual page.goto where I pass in the website, I'm adding an additional option, which is wait until network is idle. Why am I doing this? Because sometimes when you try to take a screenshot or make a PDF, the web page is not fully loaded. So what is returned is kind of empty. So you have to, there are different options you can pass in. You can pass DOM content loaded. There are different options to pass in to ensure that you're taking a screenshot or making a PDF of the exact view that you want. And then after that, what was returned was that thing you see, the screenshots you see there. I can also do a demo of this quickly if I have time.
You have time.
I have time, okay.
We're waiting, we're excited.
All right, so this is also the same, the deployed version of what I have written in my code. So I'm just trying to create a PDF for the guild.hosts URL for this meetup. Let's see. Okay, we have the PDF. That's good. Well, there's also something I noticed. Exactly, that was what I noticed. So while I was in there, I was wondering why is the picture not showing? And then I went back, changed the options, but it still wasn't showing. And then I think what I need to do is select the specific class. So you can add something called wait for selector, target the specific image and wait for it to show. But I was rushing. I did this like an hour ago. Yeah, okay, so back to my slides. And the last demo I would like to show you is how you can measure web performance using the rendering API. So this is another example. I'll try to explain it. What I essentially want to do is I want to be able to calculate. I know you can use tools like Lighthouse, but sometimes you want to have specific performance you want to check within your application. So what I've done here is I'm calculating different metrics. The first one is I'm trying to calculate the JavaScript and CSS coverage metrics for the URL I intend to visit. I'm also checking for the response start time, request time, and some timings. And then I'm calculating the time to first bytes. And then I'm collecting all the, I don't have the complete code here because it will fit. But then I'm collecting all the metrics and then returning an object back to the browser. So for this, I'll try to demo it. Let's see if it works. I think that's the last demo, so Shouldn't take too much time.
Don't worry, take as much time as you want.
Okay.
That means I don't have to speak as long.
No. Let's see.
Is this a preview of your NBC talk?
Yeah, I did it yesterday.
Okay.
Well, I keep changing the stuff that I demo, so
Cutting edge stuff right here.
let's see. Oops. So I'm using Wrangler to start this locally. Let's see. I can also show you the code where I've written it. Okay,
What is Wrangler?
Oh yeah, I mentioned Wrangler is a CLI tool that you use to work with the Cloudflare developer platform. So it helps you do things like Wrangler dev to run it locally, Wrangler deploy to publish your, yeah. So it's running. I'll just go to the URL. Oh, it's opening here. Okay. There you go. Okay. So now what I need to do is pass in a URL of a website that I would like to check the metrics. So here I'll check for my website as well. So you know why I keep missing it? It's because I have a Dutch keyboard. So whatever is here, I'm just trying to remember what is it. It's not exactly what I'm typing. Gifted green. Okay, let's see if this works. Oh, nice. Okay. So it does work. And yeah, so if you intend to like check the performance of your website, you can actually go on, you can always use Lighthouse, but if you want deep technical, like more details about the performance, you can go on to write like a script like I did to get more details and information and possibly use that. Okay, I'll go back to my slides. Where is it? Yeah. So yeah, this is currently in open beta. So if you'd like to try it out, you can scan the QR code and, you know, get to play around with it. But very soon, like in a few months, it's going to be open and generally available for everyone to use. So if you have specific use cases that you think this will be very good for, I will implore you to try it out. And if you have feedback, also, we're very happy to hear about your feedback. So I'll let you scan it before going to the next slide. Otherwise, you can scan the QR code for the slides. Like I mentioned, we keep like improving things. So one of the things we're working to improve is the limits, right? So that you can do, you know, have multiple browser sessions running within your code, and you don't have to do the durable object bypass that I showed you. We're going to be adding an endpoint to check usage so you can actually know what you're using and how much that's costing you. We have the docs as well, and I would also refer this to you if you want to learn more about the browser rendering API, and a few blog posts that we've written covering this topic. Finally, yeah, I'll let you scan the QR code for the slides so you get all the URLs that I've shared. But thank you so much. Great.
Thank you very much, Gift.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions, maybe?
Any questions?
I definitely had a blast and would recommend coming to this event the next time it's on. I'm not sure when they'll be on next, but it is a really good event to meet people who...
Number 9 of 20, whose phone's gonna ring? Oh, yes! We've got a person, we've got a winner, let's give them a round of applause!
With some accent, but now most of you think you're from Greece, so I don't have to pretend that I have an accent. I can speak Greek English, okay? And now we can continue to
the combat system, the barrier control. So it's quite a complex system.
It's really cool. Like I learned a lot from them. I also learned a lot because this is
Okay, and now clap your hands.
I definitely had a blast and would recommend coming to this event the next time it's on. I'm not sure when they'll be on next, but it is a really good event to meet people who...
Number 9 of 20, whose phone's gonna ring? Oh, yes! We've got a person, we've got a winner, let's give them a round of applause!
with some accent, but now most of you think you're from Greece, so I don't have to pretend that I have an accent. I can speak Greek English, okay? And now we can continue to
the combat system, the barrier control. So it's quite a complex system.
It's really cool. Like I learned a lot from them. I also learned a lot because this is
Okay, and now clap your hands.
I definitely had a blast and would recommend coming to this event the next time it's on. I'm not sure when they'll be on next, but it is a really good event to meet people who...
Number 9 of 20, whose phone's gonna ring? Oh, yes! We've got a person, we've got a winner, let's give them a round of applause!
with some accent, but now most of you think you're from Greece, so I don't have to pretend that I have an accent. I can speak Greek English, okay? And now we can continue to
the combat system, the barrier control. So it's quite a complex system.
It's really cool. Like I learned a lot from them. I also learned a lot because this is
Okay, and now clap your hands.
definitely had a blast and would recommend coming to this event the next time it's on. I'm not sure when they'll be on next, but it is a really good event to me.
Companies that I work for, but we're actually talking about GraphQL and sort of a way to make it less painful, because some people have noticed there's GraphQL, the good parts, it's a smaller list, GraphQL, the bad parts, and then there's GraphQL, the ugly parts. I'm glad I didn't get fired for talking to my boss about GraphQL. So tonight's talk is GraphQL minus resolvers plus TypeScript equals magic. Quick thing about me, so I'm Jesse Martin. I've been a GraphQL educator since probably about the beginning of GraphQL. I've been doing it for quite a while. I live in Germany. I have a US keyboard because I know the pain of trying to actually type on a German keyboard. It's terrible. I went to an interview once and I used their keyboard, and it was like somebody had trained a chimpanzee and then actually blindfolded them and asked them to type. So it was bad. These days, I am a sales engineer. Anybody know what a sales engineer is? Basically, I get to do pre-sales where I go and talk to customers and say, hey, here's how Hasura can make your life better or whatever, and I'll show them what it does. But before we go any further, I'm going to have some interactivity here. So if everybody could scan this QR code, we actually have a poll. We have a fancy thing. Marketing's told me I have to do this, otherwise they're not going to pay for my trips anymore. So please scan this code. Everybody got it? Everybody got it? Good. It's not working.
Hold on.
All right. And then in theory, I go to this thing. Wow, there's a lot of thumbs going on there. Okay, ready for your first question. Okay, so I'm using GraphQL in production. Please answer as appropriate. I'm not familiar, don't know it, don't use it. We're in dev now, and it powers my side project. Not fun. It's just like fun to see kind of pop around. Isn't technology amazing? We need this technology at that check-in counter, am I right? Don't know it, don't use it is taking the lead. All right, very cool. We got some side project people. Yeah, I don't know why Prod's not there, so oh well. Marketing is being too pessimistic, I guess, about the future of GraphQL here. Anybody got it in prod? Yeah, sure. What do you not have in prod? That's the question. All right. And then the last thing is about Hasura. Ooh. Please be gentle. Never heard of it. Very good. Don't know it. Don't use it. Wow. Never heard of it. You guys are being mean on purpose. No, that's great. This is my opportunity. This is fantastic. So we're going to see a little bit about what Hasura does, and I'm going to actually do some live coding tonight with a alpha version of software because I hate myself. So very cool. That's actually great to see. So tonight is for you all. Let's go back to the presentation here. And we're going to talk a little bit about GraphQL again and why TypeScript makes it awesome. And then I'm going to show you how Hasura enables that experience for you all. So if there was a few people that didn't know what GraphQL is, so a quick refresher on what GraphQL actually is. Well, I should catch that on the next slide. But for those that do know what it is, basically, if you could say I wanted to get a GraphQL API as easy as writing a TypeScript function, does that sound like a cool thing? For anybody who's written GraphQL, does that sound more painless than what you had as an experience? Yeah, a little bit. Let's talk about why that's actually a true statement for most people. So GraphQL, the good and the bad. GraphQL is a very terse syntax. It's like I can write these squirrely brackets and go ahead and say top level table, next level table. I'm writing a join in a very declarative way. It's easy for me to reason about my data, whether I have BigQuery and Postgres and whatever else backing behind my API. My interface looks the same for my end user. It's a really helpful way to expressively traverse a graph of data. And it's expressive, right? So I can actually get very declarative in how it looks. I can bring in any new person to a dev team, show them a GraphQL query. Chances are they'll be able to grok what it is that I'm showing them. And it actually allows for the architect's like dream of subgraphs and supergraphs where I have one data model and another data model, and it's joined together. So architects love it because it translates really well to a whiteboard. And I actually would have not put scales well on the good side because the more that you add GraphQL to your projects, the more you get these big smelly things called resolvers. GraphQL works by taking a schema manifest that represents all of my data, a big old messy piece of code that actually tells me how the engine's supposed to take that from my databases, and it smashes them together and gives me the GraphQL server. So essentially what we've said, we've told people that GraphQL is so great and why it's much better than REST is because you're not having to write all these data resolvers. You just have to write GraphQL data resolvers instead. So that was not the shift left that we promised the world. Anyways, the bad parts, schema definitions. So manually documenting my entire data model, writing boilerplate resolvers is really a messy pain, and optimizing for performance. Essentially, every new problem has to be reinvented, things that we solved a long time ago in the REST world. And errors. If you don't know what a pain errors are in GraphQL, it's literally like response code 200, here's an error. Like that's a thing. We can talk about it later. There are reasons why we do it that way, but it is kind of, yeah, some people really don't like that. So what if you did not need to write resolver code for GraphQL? Like what if I could just write a function and that was automatically generated for my GraphQL? What if I didn't have to write schema definitions? What if I could actually infer what a schema looked like based on TypeScript types? Like what if I could actually just say those types map really cleanly to a GraphQL type? And if I didn't even have to think about the actual data loader issues, where I could say that the data loader problem is if I'm going to be doing a join, a lot of times if you're not being careful about it, what you're going to get is a bunch of recursive calls over and over again to the nested children. That's called the dreaded N+1 problem. And if you don't watch out for that, it's a great way to DDoS your system and have a good chat with your DevOps team. So how do we actually solve for that? Well, the way that we do it at Hasura now, so Hasura historically, its magic sauce has been Haskell, essentially. Its magic sauce has been an engine that would take in a Postgres database or a BigQuery database or whatever else you might have. Athena, I got to say Athena, right, because we're in the Amazon building. So whatever you want to give it, it'll introspect the schema. It'll actually go ahead and generate GraphQL APIs for you. It's pretty cool tech. You can feel free to check it out. Well, we decided to iterate on that with our current version. And we've taken the parts that we've learned from implementing this at scale for a lot of big companies. I mean, NASA's using it. I don't have to say anything more beyond that. A lot of big companies are actually using this. And we've realized that what we needed was even a more declarative way to abstract our modeling of our schema so we can describe data in terms of what's in the database and what its behaviors are. And that's actually extremely helpful because I don't have to try to create some kind of a new syntax. I can say, regardless of what my data models are, I describe them in a singular way, and then an engine will actually go through and be able to pick up the rest. So connectors, we have this new pattern that we're calling the data connector pattern. And essentially what it allows us to do is describe, I tell my engine, my models look like this. So I can say, here's what the actual data types look like. And then I say, here's what a connector is. This is how you actually read that system. So I say, here's how I select many in BigQuery or in Athena. Here's how I select one out of Athena. Here's what the models are. And then the API becomes an artifact of those two facts. And then the functions in TypeScript land, if I use a data connector pattern for TypeScript, I am using that same concept where I just say, my annotations are actually describing the model of my data. And the inferences from those types are actually my GraphQL schema. Then the connector actually is able to just automatically read a function and be able to generate a GraphQL API. So that's exactly what Hasura is trying to do. We have a stateless engine that is able to take these two artifacts. It consumes your GraphQL API, your TypeScript document. It's able to infer everything it needs to know about what the actual schema should look like. And then it actually generates a GraphQL API on top. and it will also be producing a REST API too. So the current version of Hasura does GraphQL and REST. The current one I'm showing tonight is only doing GraphQL so far, but it'll actually have REST API as well too. And yeah, it's I just want to show it to you. So let's actually have a look at what this actually looks like. And like I promised, it's going to be alpha software. We're going to be releasing it soon, but let's go ahead and see exactly how this is supposed to look. So what we have here is a relatively blank project and a handful of scripts that sometimes help me get out of trouble when things go sideways. So what I have is a simple binary here that's downloaded off the web. This is the Hasura 3 CLI. We can kind of see what it looks like. Is this too small? I can maybe bump it up a little bit. Is that better? Awesome. So let's just kind of have a quick look at what the CLI sort of gives us. It lets us reason about our project. We can kind of have some cool little init scripts and whatever else we want to do. Fancy ASCII art, the whole 9 yards. It's a good CLI. So let's go ahead and actually start a brand new Hasura project. So to do that, we do h3 init, and then I give it a location that I want to create this project. So what happens here is it goes ahead and it creates a project, and it gives me a directory structure for what this project is supposed to look like, giving me, again, those architects' favorite things, subgraphs and supergraphs. And so I can go ahead and say, this is where my code is going to ultimately live, and describe like where the build locations are, different things that this project needs to operate. Okay, so that's really cool. I have a nice project name, First Coyote. I always love those generated strings. And now I have a README here, and we're going to go ahead and actually create a brand new project. So what I'm going to do is, actually, I'm going to launch this first, and then we're going to kind of see what the console looks like, and then we'll actually add data afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and use the watch command here, which is simply watch for a nice local dev experience. I give it the dir location, fire it off, and it says, do you want to create a new environment? You say yes. Triggers off a build. It gives me some outputs of where I can actually go to view this stuff. So I'm going to go to my console here, and that should fire off over one of these pages. If I click on it correctly, there we go. So if we see where that one got built, there it is. We have here a nice little console where we can kind of see what our code looks like. We can sort of see what our running environment is. If you're not familiar with GraphQL, this is the graphical interface. This is the canonical way that you browse about your API. But as you can see here, there is nothing inside of my data. And so what we want to do now is actually fix that by adding in some data. We can see that I have one build applied. Another cool thing about this new version is that we actually have immutable schemas. So that gives us two awesome benefits. One is we can do rollbacks to point in time. It also means that the engine's not having to reconcile new changes to the schema. We can actually have super fast builds. But let's go ahead and talk about TypeScript giving us GraphQL API. So I need to show you the magic here. So here we are. We got this piece here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off for a second and go back to my README. I'm going to grab in this bit of code here. And what that does is it's saying add a data connector for me that will essentially just add in this thing called the TypeScript connector. So again, we talked about this idea of a connector, something that introspects TypeScript functions, generates GraphQL APIs from them. Let's go ahead and add that. And we'll see what it's done underneath my subdirectories here. I go to my subgraph, to my default subgraph, and I have a data connector now called tsLogic. And here I have a simple TypeScript function created. And let's go ahead and start to watch this again now. That's the right path. We say yes. And if we got everything running correctly, it's not going to error on me. This, again, it's alpha software, so knock on wood. It's stress tested for the US quite well, and sometimes I have problems in Europe. It's working very good. So what we're going to do is if we come down here to this connector, we can see what it's done is it's actually automatically generated models based on the function that it found inside of that TypeScript document. And so what I need to do is say I found my models, but I need to tell, I'm going to go ahead and hide the terminal there so it's not quite so messy and noisy. I'm going to go ahead and tell my engine go ahead and track these models that you found in this kind of a DML of sorts. Go ahead and track those inside of my engine. So I have a nice VS Code extension for that. I'm going to go ahead and say, Hasura, track all of the models you found. We'll say yes. We'll go ahead and put in the default environment. And with that, we can come back over to our engine here. I'm going to go ahead and close down that window. And if we go ahead and look at our builds, we'll see that we actually have a brand new build. We'll go ahead and open up that one. And then we're going to go and click on that one as in our environment. And if we go to Explorer, we actually have now inside of our environment, looking at graphical, it's a mutation. We can see we actually have the hello function automatically added as a GraphQL object. No data resolver, no having to map out anything and that's writing schema definitions, nothing else. I just wrote a TypeScript function. But hello world is nice, that's pretty basic. But let's go ahead and actually see how fast we can iterate on this. And this is the part where things can really go off the rails here. So now we're going to ask Copilot to write us a function. But this is where I need some audience participation. So I need the weirdest sounding function, the weirdest family-friendly sounding function that you can think of to have this be added to our scheme. I need a volunteer. Give me something funky. We're in London. You can be family-friendly-ish. Nobody. No creativity.
Very London joke. How many knives you need to crash the brick? Something.
How many knives you need to crush a brick? Like a function that asks for a joke or what?
So you can the interface how to produce bricks. Like the ingredients and everything, if that's what you wanted to build
So a function that gives us the recipe for building bricks.
pretty much.
Okay, let's do two things here. So we're going to go ahead and give this Copilot. We're going to say export a function for the recipe for creating bricks. Give it a minute here. That's okay, we'll accept that one for now. Let's get something a little bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and actually say, I kind of like the original thing you made me think of. Export a function for a public random joke generator website. Family friendly-ish. Use native node fetch. We don't want Axios. Use native fetch. I don't want node fetch either. It's built in these days. Come on, Copilot. You know better. Well, I think we can actually just tell it that it doesn't need node fetch. We'll accept that. Let's see what it gives us if we really get off the rails here. So we're exporting the function there. It's going to go ahead and fetch that. Is that a real thing? Does anybody know? Well, we're going to find out. So anyways, we're going to go ahead. We've got a couple of random functions here, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and go down to our system here. And what we need to do is refresh our data connector. And we got a whole bunch of new models that it found out of those functions. Nice. Let's go ahead and track all of that. All right, so we got new objects here. And great, so we're going to go ahead and save this, and we're going to go ahead and hopefully, we've already got a build running. So let's go ahead and see what we got. So if we refresh our builds, we got to go ahead and grab the latest build. This is something we're fixing right now, so you'll be able to have a URL for the latest edition. Let's see here. It knows that it's the old one, but it's not viewing it. So, and here we go. Come on. We're almost there. Come on. I'm just trying to see. I see the old version here. Otherwise, I'm going to have to force the build here on without the watch command. Let's go ahead and see. Let's see if we get any console errors. Like I told you, Alpha software here. It's pinging just fine. Did I actually save this manifest? Otherwise, I'll show you what the CLI commands are for forcing a build. Looks like I have to do that because it's getting his brain really crossed here. I'm going to go ahead and GraphQL API not available. That's a bad omen. So what we're going to do is try to apply this build here manually. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and cancel out of my watch command here. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go ahead and give me a new build, not git, h3, and we'll say h3 build create. What's that? Thank you. Bud sounds pretty good too right now. What is that family friendly? What? Let's see here. Project name. You don't need that specified. See, live coding. It's alpha software. Alpha coders. All right. We're going to go ahead and grab this version number, and we're going to go ahead and apply this now. And give the version stamp of what this build's supposed to be. All right, so now we should have a manual build for us. Let's go ahead and refresh it and see what we get. It's possible that I broke something with the, trying to get cute with the joke generator, but let's find out. So we should be viewing the latest and greatest version of it. Let's go ahead and go to the Explorer. Hey, we have our types. Nice. So we have everything added there. We can see the... Yeah. Like I said, they could have gone a lot of different directions. Let's test out that. Let's test out the joke generator. I do not take any responsibility for what is about to appear on the screen here. So get random joke, and please be family friendly. Internal error. That's pretty funny. It is. So we can actually, here's a cool thing. We can actually view a trace and see exactly what occurred here inside of the trace. So we can see the explain steps. We can see where things actually went off the rails built in. So full introspection and observability on everything. Let's see if we got it working with the get brick creation steps. We got to see if we can at least get something out of it. So actually, I do know what the issue is. I have to have watch running. That's actually my bad. Let me try watching this again because it's not being able to resolve back to my system. This is part of the iteration process. So if I run that again, we say yes, because it needs to be able to reach back to my machine using the tunnel. And let's go ahead and see if that actually plays nice now. Otherwise, NG-Rock comes to the rescue. All right, so we should be back up and running. Let's go ahead and see what we get. I'm going to check to see, because in theory, it gave me a new build with that. So yeah, we'll go ahead and apply that new build. And we'll go ahead and select the latest. And we'll go back to our GraphQL Explorer. So we have steps for building bricks. The types, I could definitely make them be more explicit, but let's check that get random joke now, because that's what you all wanted to see. So it was more realistic. I don't know if that's a realistic endpoint, to be totally honest. But yeah, so anyways, that's how we can really quickly iterate. You can see from the entire process there, writing a TypeScript function locally. And what if we were to potentially add in annotations to that function itself? So if we go back to our TypeScript file, we can actually add in annotations here. We can say something like JS I want a param on this. I'm going to say hello name is a string. And we're going to go ahead and remove this. This is going to scare somebody. Yeah, I'm old. That's how we do string concatenation. We're going to go ahead and annotate this now. JS doc, we'll say param name. Let's see if it gives me what I need. Sure, that looks believable. I don't really like Copilot very much. I use ChatGPT for most of my stuff. But now we can actually see that we actually are able to annotate this function. If we save that, we get the new build built out of there and go back over to our API. And we come down to our hello operation. I think I need to choose the latest again. I should be running the latest then. If we go back to our Explorer, GraphQL, it's a query now. Or was it a mutation still? Let's try mutation. I think I'm still not getting my API, so the builds are running just a little bit slow. But I'll just reboot it once, and if it doesn't work, then we'll call it a day. Because I have to actually retrack things, and this is a funny thing with YAML. I do love YAML, but it's if you put strings with the dash lines and then you're copying them straight over, then YAML has a bad day with that. So we'll go ahead and refresh this connector. And then we're going to go ahead and track all the objects. And with that, let's see if we got the new build out of there. Yep. So we're going to select the newest. And we can now go ahead and see if we go to the Graphical Explorer, grab our mutation. Hello. Should take a name now. Unless I'm totally off the rails at this point. Did I grab the right function? It's group coding here, everybody. All right, reboot once and then we'll see what happens. And then after that, we'll wrap up the talk and go on to the next person. So we should have everything that we need identified and saved there. Test back over with the we do have a new build at least. We go over to the Graphical Explorer. It's still not wanting to give me any kind of an input on that. So, well, you can trust me that it works when it works. So like I said, it's alpha, so there's definitely a lot of bleeding edges on this. The Hasura product itself is quite fascinating. I just want to give you one last little sneak peek here. So obviously, there's a lot of utilities out there that can do some TypeScript stuff to do TypeScript to GraphQL. There's a number of engines out there. The thing that a lot of them can do, and this is where I think it's going to have a lot of value for most of you, let's go ahead and add one last connector here, where we're going to go ahead and add in Postgres. There we go. And now we'll see as we actually have added a new data connector. I'm going to go ahead and say refresh the data connectors for my Postgres one. Track everything again.
It's new line.
That's your PGDB. Unless we're fully off the rails at this point. So actually we're getting...
There's a new line.
There's a new line?
Yeah.
Where?
In the database connector string.
Yeah, but it should have closed off fine. Because it usually ignores. Let me try the watch command first here and see if that wakes it up. I'm really off the rails now. So from here, we can go ahead and tell it to refresh the connections because it's not seeing the actual database at the point. So it could be that there's actually a problem with the database. Moving to try and say refresh connector. There we go. Now we have the types. And then we'll go ahead and say track all of those. And now if we go back to our API, grab the latest build. There it is. We can see underneath queries, we actually have Postgres objects now automatically tracked by adding in a data connector, telling Postgres from a schema is telling it how to introspect it and what the connector is able to do. So getting the same kind of workflow from custom business logic with TypeScript, the ability to move back and forth between databases, generating a GraphQL API this quickly is fantastic. If you've never tried doing it with a generated tool before, I recommend checking it out. Again, this is alpha. It's beta next month. We do have a version 2 that currently works for some of this workflow. You can feel free to try it out. But I hope that this gives you some excitement to test it out. Thank you for bearing with it going off the rails there for a little bit. The last little piece here, if anybody's curious, is we do have a $100 off for new accounts on the cloud product. If anybody would like to give the tires a proper kick. But yeah, I'll be around for any questions afterwards. And thanks for watching.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
this, Ars, man, you're disrupting my flow. Yeah. I'm not restarting though. No. Don't have time to restart. We have to keep the momentum going. So CodeMods, super useful. Did it go? Is it going? Is it going, Ars? We're good. We're good. We're live. Let's clap for live. Yeah. Okay. So super useful for these large migrations. And when I think about it, like we are in a time, right? Like we are in a time where things are changing in the way we're coding. We're moving to the edge. We're moving to the cloud. We're moving to server components, maybe. So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening right now in the web. And I think that it's a really, really good time to look at CodeMods as a way to bring yourself into the future. So let's talk about in the future in a second, but I want to sort of talk about the past. Okay, I've lost my speaker notes. It's all your fault, Iris. Okay, yeah. So let's go a little bit of history. This is me as a young coder at 14. I don't know if anyone knows 2600 magazine is like a hacker magazine. I was a young hacker. I wanted to basically like destroy civilization or whatever, or just like hack stuff, like do cool stuff. And I thought that computers would be like my gateway to, I don't know, being able to do whatever I wanted and make like a name for myself in the world or whatever. And the first programming language I learned was Perl. How many of you know Perl? Perl is so awesome. Perl is the greatest. And Perl is especially good. So this book, Learning Perl, was probably one of the first programming books that I got over at like Tower Books in Bellevue, near Seattle, where I grew up. The second edition came out in 94, the same year that picture, or sorry, 97, the same year that picture was taken. I was like 14. And I was learning stuff like this. And Perl, if you haven't used it, Perl is really famous for being able to do, Perl is like a mix of like shell scripting and like kind of PHP scripting languages. There's a lot of really weird, quirky syntax, but it's really, really good at text processing. So a lot of the regex stuff that we're used to in JavaScript and other languages came from Perl. My favorite use of Perl, and really the only way that I still use Perl now, is this inline search and replace feature that Perl has. So you can go perl-i-pe, give it a regex and a file, and it'll just change the thing in the file. It's actually so good. It's so good. It's available in like any system. And, you know, in the late 90s, I was working on ISP, and I used stuff like this all the time for like messing with config files and like, I don't know, like DNS and like sendmail and all this kind of weird stuff. But let's bring this back into the kind of stuff that we're doing today. So how would this kind of thing, like a text transform, help us when we're trying to, like, let's say, upgrade from a function declaration to an arrow function? Let's say we want to like upgrade our code base. Like, what are we going to be writing? Like a regex, like this, like any. First of all, like I don't think that works. But like even if it kind of worked, like can you name like 3 problems with doing this kind of approach, like using a regex to like upgrade your code like that? Well, what's going to happen? What will break? Well, why will it break? Why will it break? What's the edge case? Give one edge case.
Well, arrow functions, for example, are not rewindable. They don't have a reference to these.
So this, it won't work for this. It's not going to work if you change the spacing. It's not going to work if it's on multiple lines. Like, unfortunately, it's pretty broken. So, well, like the Perl-inspired regex is kind of my first exposure to these transforms. It really doesn't cut it when it comes to transforming your code base. Anyone ever use like in their IDE, like the search and replace feature? Probably normally, but sometimes there's like a regex version and you can do weird things there. And like, I've gotten like some real use out of that. But for anything more serious, people are using abstract syntax trees. Now, raise your hand if you're familiar with abstract syntax trees. Okay, about half the folks. This is like a programming concept, and I am not like a computer science studied person. I have an environmental degree, so I like the tree bit, not so much the syntax, abstract, whatever bit, but I'll kind of tell it in a simple way. So it's this, an AST is this machine readable data structure that represents the structure of your code. So all the things that your code can do are represented in this data structure. It's just a, like in JavaScript, it's just an object, right? But it's a tree object, kind of like a DOM for your code where you can inspect it and see what's going on. I'll give you an example of this. It's not even a talk about ASTs, it's a talk about AI, but we have to build to it. So AST, for this function, you have the program node, you have the function declaration node, you have the block statement and return statement. So it's like each key part of your syntax are represented as a node in this tree. This is a very straight tree. It's not a very exciting tree, but I don't want to get too complicated. Just keep a very simple tree here. So if you look at this, there's tools out there that will allow you to like actually inspect your tree. And you see there's all these like this metadata and other information about what's happening there. So if you compile your code into an AST, you can see there's a lot of information that programmatically you can inspect and do things with. So compared to the function declaration version, an arrow function, it has a different tree, right? It's going to be a variable declaration with an arrow function expression, a block statement. And so you have different nodes that make up the tree. And so how do AST-based code mods work? It works something like this. You have your code. You put your code through a parser. This parser is like Acorn or the Babel parser. If you're familiar with Babel, it's a common tool. That will generate an AST. And then you usually modify the AST. Maybe give it a little paint, maybe change one of the nodes from function declaration to arrow function or whatever, modify it. And then there's this reverse parser. There's a tool called Recast, there's a few others, that will take that AST and convert it back into code. It's actually amazing what you can do with AST-based code mods. Like you read the as code, you can use all your JavaScript knowledge to go through that tree and do interesting things, change it, it spits back out code at the end. So tool like Prettier, I was like, how does Prettier work? Well, like look it up. It's like, oh yeah, it parses the AST, and then it basically doesn't change the AST, but it reprints the AST with like a special version of Recast, which is the common like AST printer that has like the formatting that it wants. And so it's the same concept of how that works. So Recast is this really important part of the puzzle because it takes your tree, turns it into readable code. Now, other tools like ESLint also depend on ASTs. ESLint autofix is something a little bit different though. So you'll see with ESLint, if you make a custom, anyone made a custom ESLint rule? It's actually really fun, super cool. You have to learn about ASTs and like learn about the nodes, but then once you figure out, you can do really, really powerful things, especially if you have like a pattern of coding in your company or something that you want people to stop doing. It's really reasonably easy with a little bit of help to write a custom rule to do something. So here's an example. We're looking for an identifier node in the AST with the name of foo, and then we'll report it. So if you wanted to add a custom fixer though, for example, with ESLint, you can add to the report function a fix method, and then that gives you this fixer object. And instead of modifying the AST, it actually modifies the string directly. It's a slight variation, but it's still basically AST-based. Most code mods, though, are built around a tool called JSCodeshift, which is, I think, sort of, it's like in the Facebook code repo, but I don't think it's actually very maintained by Facebook. I think it was kind of a volunteer project, great project. And that provides this really, really handy API for being able to generate an AST from code, modify that AST, and then generate source code at the end. So here's an example. And they consider it like a jQuery type API, which like people are like jQuery, like that's old, but it's actually like brilliant. You can just see how simple it is that they chain this all together, find variables, name foo, rename them to bar, give me the source code, like 4 lines of code. You can then run your JSCodeshift with your custom transform and poof, like you're gonna have new files. You can transform thousands of files in seconds. It's actually fantastic. So, okay, I know I'm going fast. I have to get to the AI bits. Don't want us to keep you all here forever, so let's go. How do you make a transform to convert function expression to arrow function? I don't know why I use that example. It's just a simple example. It's concrete. It's hopefully not too complicated. With JSCodeshift, you do something like this. So read the source into your JSCodeshift, find the function expressions, filter out anything with this, someone mentioned. We don't want this because this kind of doesn't work with arrow functions the same way. And then replace them with a new arrow function expression. Convert that to source. So very powerful things you can do and a few lines of code. You've got to learn like the AST node types though. Like it's a bit of research. There's a cool website called AST Explorer that helps you dive into all this. It's so fun and nerdy. And so you can start like, I made this horse class and you can see it's like a very long tree. Trees grow very quickly. It's not like a, I don't know, trees take a long time in real life, but in this, they grow so fast. But it lets you do really, really cool things. you can select what kind of transform you want, and it like will automatically pop up these like default transforms for all these different tools. So like, oh, ESLint rule, JSCodeshift transform. This is a really fun one. It's 16 lines of code, and it reverses all of your class, all your variable names. You just literally just run this little code, and then you get out what's in the bottom right-hand corner, which is like an really insane version, like upside down version of your code. Obviously, it's not real. No one's like going to be like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to reverse all my variable names. But the idea, right, that you can so profoundly change your code in just a few lines of code is very powerful. I gave a talk like 8 or 9 years ago now called AST, about how ASTs give you superpowers, because I really got excited about, like, it's sort of, instead of just thinking about code, it's this meta insight about how you can shift your code and change it in powerful ways. But what I've learned since then is that AI can give you even more superpowers. So building on top of that, and I want to show you what I've learned. And I have to be clear, like, I don't know anything about AI. I don't know anything about like ChatGPT. Like, this is not something I do at work. This is something that I just wanted to research so I could build on my previous knowledge of like doing ASTs and linting and code transforms, but to figure out like, is my old knowledge like no longer relevant? Like what are the cool kids of the future going to be doing for transforms? Because I don't want to be like completely left out. Like, I'm pretty happy with my current level of understanding of this stuff, but I'm like, I need to make sure I'm not completely out of touch with the kids. So let us begin our journey into AI-based code transforms. So the way I thought about this is like, literally, like I said, like I've never done anything really with this. I don't even use like, what's the one you were using earlier? Copilot? I don't even know how to install it, man. Like, it's not like, I'm not so using these tools. Part of it because I'm at Amazon and we've got Code Whisperer, and like I couldn't figure out how to install that one, but you know, neither here nor there. So the first thing I was like, all right, we will get ChatGPT to be the code transform. I'll just go to the website, paste in my code, and like, fair enough, you know, like I posted in some code, like, here's some JavaScript code, and then it just made fun of my code and told me there were problems with it, that it was bad. And then I had to explain, like, no, like, I need you to turn this, oh, this isn't the right slide. Yeah, oh, no, it's over there. Like, I need you to turn this into arrow functions. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. And then it like gave me like 2 or 3 different versions of arrow functions. So it was like, it took a little bit of prodding. Like, it's sort of be like, okay, like, give me the new version. It's gonna be better. Obviously, this doesn't really scale. So I was like, what if I went to the chat and was like, actually, friends, I need you to make me an eslint plugin that will auto-fix my functions, my function expressions to arrow functions. So it was like getting a little bit more intense. And then it proceeds to give me like the entire eslint like documentation. Like, here's how you set up a project. Here's how you make a plugin. And it actually like, I mean, like fully, it's like I looked at it and it's not like wrong, like it's not right, but it's like in the ballpark of right. Like, it's like, I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, it explains, like, I mean, like Rachel, I know you write some good docs, but like, I was impressed, okay? Like, it copies someone else's docs and just like spit them out for me. Like, that's actually a pretty helpful tool for me to see step by step what I needed to do. Like, wasn't bad, but like didn't actually work. So then I was like, I'm gonna push this further. I wanna see how far I can get with these transforms just in the chat bot. So then I went to To-Do MVC, which is like a website where you can see different versions of making to-do lists. And I just downloaded a zip file and was like, hey, just like convert this React app to Vue. Just take the whole zip file, change the whole thing. And what do you think? Do you think it worked? Okay, it didn't work. Suckers. So, sorry, did you want the picture? It's fine. Yes. Okay. So what it did is it's like, oh yeah, I'll give you Vue. And it's like, change app.jsx to app.vue. And then it gave me the file. And at first I was like, this is amazing. And then I like looked at the file and it's just completely empty. I'm like, what is this? And then it's like having me change each file to a Vue file, which I respected, but the contents of those files were basically empty. So I was like, dang it, this isn't really working. I really thought I was like, this is the like straight up the future right now. And then it was like, not quite there. So then I had to like, again, I had to poke it. And I was like, all right, friends, what if you actually made this do the thing that you're supposed to do? And it's like, okay, fine. Like, I'll put all like the event handlers in and like do some stuff. So like, after kind of like convincing it to like give me the code, like literally this is just empty, like add your styles. I'm like, where's the styles? Like, come on. So I had to like tell it to do things. And then it kind of would, but it didn't really transform it. It really just like, it just made a new one based on what I told it to do. I was a little bit hurt. Like, you know what? I have to pay money for this thing, right? And it doesn't work. I was kind of annoyed. So these are sort of the limitations of just like using the chatbot, but that's not how people are really going to use this, right? Like, you're not like, oh, I'm going to change like 2,000 files. I'm just going to copy and paste them into like the chat GPT. Like, probably would take less time to just do it yourself. So what we are going to talk about is how people are approaching this problem in real life. And I will mention, like, all of these programs that we're going to cover are super like beta, alpha, experimental. They're all broken. It's really fun. Like there's a type of time when you're like doing stuff and you want things to be stable and like work. But there's also a type of time when you're like, these docs are crap. I have to dive through the source code and like nothing is working. Like, oh, I'm going to be so smart when I figure this out. So it's like, it's actually exciting to work on this kind of thing. We're going to talk about 3 tools: CodeMod Studio, JSCodemod, and Flame AI. So these are, as far as I could tell, kind of the cutting edge of doing code mods with AI. They're all a lot better than just pasting stuff in the chat bot. But they're all also really bad, as I will show you. So CodeMod Studio, this is such a clever idea. So what they have is, what this tool does, it took me a little while to figure out. You just get it and it's like, it looks like you have an IDE or something. I'm like, what is happening here? So what you do is you put in your before code, what you want your code, what your code looks like now, and you put in your after code. You say, I want it to look like that. So in this case, I've got my functions, and then I've got my my error functions. So like, transfer this to look like that. And what it does, it's really fascinating. It generates ASTs for both. And it will then send, you can see what it's doing up here. Basically, it's going to try to build a code mod based on your old AST and the new AST. So instead of looking at your code, it's actually looking at the AST generated of your code and specifically tries to build a JSCodeshift transform for your ASTs. So it's a little bit, it's not saying, okay, transform the code. It's saying, build me, kind of like I did earlier when I said, build me this tool. But instead of saying, build me a tool that will convert the code from this to this, it's a build me a tool that will convert the AST from this to this, which is a bit like, maybe they're onto something here. They're doing something a bit more clever than my simple way. And so you put that in and it will actually generate an entire code mod, like legit code mod, and then it'll output at the end. Let's see, I highlighted a bunch of things. So yeah, you put in the before, the after, you click build a code mod, it'll do it. You'll see when I did it though, oh wait, that's not the one. Let's see if this one actually works. Yeah, it actually got one that kind of worked. But you'll notice whatever code mod they came up with, it only fixed the first function. It didn't quite fix the second one. So it was like kind of a broken code mod that they came out with me. It's like, we'll get you a little bit of the way there, but I cannot use this tool if I don't already know about ASTs and JSCodeshift and all the stuff I had to learn before. Like, knowing what I know, this might help me build the thing a little bit faster, but I was very sad. But they do have this interactive mode, so I can go back and be like, hey, friend, like what I do like about the chat is you can just be like, no, that's wrong. You need to do this again and do a better job. So I went there and I was like, this did not work. Can you fix it? And then it went back, changed it, and it actually still didn't work. It didn't fix it. But like there was this like sense of, I think it's moving in the right direction. And if I give it a little help, maybe it'll help me a lot more. So that's where I kind of gave up on this CodeMod Studio. It's a very fascinating tool. It also has this like, it's called GUI Builder. You like drag your code up here and you get the AST, and it's like a bit like, I think I have to be smarter than me to use this tool. But also like, I'm convinced that it's got some promise here. Like it was looking interesting. But then we're moving on for this. It was a bit too like, I feel like I had to work too hard on this, and I wanted like to go back to just like riding my little like, hey chatbot, do all my work for me. So then I looked at another tool called JSCodemod. Now JSCodemod, I think is like kind of it's really trying to be like, we are better than JSCodeshift. Like all their documentation, like we are so much more up to date and we can go faster. And like, it's a bit like, okay, someone's got a little bit of, you know, they're trying to prove themselves. I don't know the story of who's behind this, but it's a bit, you know, all the writing is like talking about how much cooler they are. but they have some fantastic. Actually, Nick, he's the founder of I can't remember the name of it, but an AI company that's doing some really interesting things with JavaScript frameworks. But this section on AI code mods has so much really interesting information here, and all this like really good insights. I highly recommend. I mean, this is like super niche, but if you are interested in the subject, like go find this particular README file because it has a lot of really good insights. Like one of the things that it mentioned I thought was so fascinating is that AI-based code mods are not. What's the word? They're not going to give you the same result each time. So you might ask it to change your file and it'll change it one way, and then the next time it'll change it a slightly different way. And so it's very interesting. Your results may vary. One time I did this, I ran the same function that I'll show you in a second, and it had all these comments, and then I did it again, there was no comments. And like it's very interesting. I don't know, it's very fascinating. Deterministic. It's not deterministic. That's what he said. So good docs. In order to use this tool, you need to go to OpenAI, click the API section, generate an API key. You have to give them like money, like £10 or whatever, $10 to like get some little tokens into your account. But these things are like, it costs only like pennies to use. It's not very expensive. And when I ran the tool, and that has like a couple built-in code mods. So one of them is called JS to TS. You run it, and it's supposed to just add types to all your JS, which is like, if you're migrating to TypeScript, like, wouldn't it be nice if you could just magic the thing? This is a perfect use for a code mod because many people are still migrating to TypeScript. They have a bunch of any. It's like, what if the code could just do the types for me? We immediately ran into problems though. So this is like, sorry, your file's too large. It turns out ChatGPT's API only allows like 4,000 characters or something. So if you have like a big JavaScript file, can only like transform the first like couple of lines or something. Like it's very frustrating. But on the files that it did work on, it actually kind of worked. So again, you can't really see it, but back here, I just ran this npx, Nick Heiner, JSCodemod, built-in code mod. It's like, that's like literally not even in the docs how to do it. You have to kind of search through. But when you get it to run, you can see it added types. Like new count was a number. It added that. For the use state, it put in numbers. So it correctly inferred the types and added them to my file, which like I felt was quite a win, actually. And you can see in the GitHub like exactly what the code mod looked like. And I just like having to write like complicated AST modifying stuff to literally just this prompt is like so nice. Convert this to JS. Do the thing. Use any if you can't figure out what to do. It's like 3 sentences compared to what literally was probably like 200 lines of code to do something like that. No more. Like, how much code would it be to automatically infer types? Like, I can't literally imagine how to do something that complicated. 5 lines of code. So anyone can code now, I guess, because you just send this off to ChatGPT and it kind of figures it out. Like I said, the tool itself, it's pretty broken. Like, it's clearly like experimental quality, but it was like good fun, and it gave me a lot of hope for the future. The last, that's JSCodemod. The last one that I looked at is called Flame AI, and I think this is the most advanced of the bunch, and it does some tricks to, and they have cool like little thing. It does some tricks to get around some of the limitations that the other ones had. The first thing about it, it was made by Jamund Holgren, who actually basically has my name. Also, our parents went to high school together. We found out like last year. Super weird. Pretty nice guy, Jamund. And I mean, just still like it freaks me out. But yeah, so that's Jamund, and he made this tool, Flame AI. He does a React Native consultancy called Infinite Red and runs a React Native meetup in Portland. Super friendly guy. He's got an excellent talk on YouTube about this tool, which you can see here. But I'm gonna kind of break it down for you. And I went on Twitter and was like messaging him. I was like, I watched your talk. I'm still confused, and like got a little bit more insight. So I guess I told him I was gonna get to talk about this. So let's go into, oh wait, what have I done? What have I done? Oh, I pressed down instead of, yeah, okay. That's not what I want to do. So for this one, Flame AI is mainly for React Native upgrades, but it has other use cases as well. And what they do is they like track each of the upgrades that can happen in React Native. Apparently it's like quite annoying. Does anyone use React Native like properly? Oh yeah. Rachel wrote the React Native docs. Apparently, upgrades can be quite difficult. It then goes through each file of like a generic React Native upgrade and creates a diff. And then it takes that diff. That's a generic upgrade from like a generic like vanilla repo. It takes that diff and it goes to your file, to your repo and says, okay, what files do you have that are also in the other thing? And then it sends like the patch file, like the diff, and your file to ChatGPT and says, okay, the diff should look something like this. Can you figure out how to apply it? And then they use this feature called function calling. Does anyone know function calling in ChatGPT? Okay, cool. This is something I learned too. It's a really interesting feature. It sounds like ChatGPT is going to run the function for you, but it doesn't do that. I'll explain what it does. So they use function calling to get higher quality results. And then if it gets stuck, it does interactive. It asks you for help. And then changes are returned in this patch format. So you have to sort of like pay for how big your response is and all these things. And so they use this really concise format to get the data back. And the function calling helps them define what the format is to get the data back. So let me go into this a little bit more. Interactive mode is super cool. You can see this particular chain set here. This is from Jamund's video, by the way. It didn't return a good result for this file. So you say this is wrong, and then you can prompt it and say, how can we fix just this file and make this particular one better? So it goes file by file and allows you to like, again, prompt the AI to help it do a better job. And in the example, he said something like, oh, you got to do the path differently, and it got it right. And then the way that they're doing, this is the prompt that they're using to send this, or the prompt generator that they have. Again, the prompt is just like the thing that you tell the ChatGPT. It's like the source code that you send to GPT. So it's very interesting. It's saying we're working with a file called file. Here's that code of that file, and then here's the diff. And so it can actually, ChatGPT can actually understand if you have like the diff, like the patch format with the pluses and minuses, like you see when you're doing like a merge conflict or something. It can understand that and say, this is the plus and minuses I should see. This is the diff. Can you apply these to the file in like a way that makes sense? And then there's all these notes here to say like, make sure you're doing it this way and make sure that you fix any issues. And it actually appears to work very, very well. So it's super impressive that ChatGPT can understand the diff format. And it means instead of sending the entire like other file, like make the file look like this, you say, make the file just like this, include these small set of changes. So it saves on the space that they're sending. For the function calling, let me try and explain that a little bit better. So it's function calling, when you're sending it to ChatGPT, you're telling them, I want you to structure your response as arguments to a function. That's a little bit of a weird thing. So you basically say to ChatGPT, okay, we're going to take the output and we're going to stick it directly in the function. Now, it's so that you can call the function with the output of ChatGPT. So they give an example. ChatGPT's docs about like you're gonna ask for information about the weather, and then you're gonna like parse it and do something. But in this case, what he does is what this allows it to do basically is you give a lot more information about exactly what you're expecting from ChatGPT, and it gives you a much better response. It's not like a rambly text like you normally get from the chat. It's actually like just very specifically defined JSON. So you say, I'm doing a function that does this exact thing. You tell it the parameters. Okay, there's an object that has properties of file, which is going to do this. You give it all these descriptions. So you very precisely tell it the parameters of the function that you're going to use it for. This is its patch function that they're using to apply these patches. So it's just like, I need the array of all the changes that we're going to like search in order to insert and remove. And so it's a very like efficient format that you're defining. And then when you send this to ChatGPT, it will send its output in a way that is structured like this. So they're able to save on the bits that are coming back and get better, higher quality data. Now, this stuff really only matters, like I think for 97% of the people here, you may use one of these tools someday. Maybe like 60, 70% may use one of these tools someday. Maybe 10 or 20% of you will actually be like tinkering on tools like this. But I think as AI becomes more popular and more integrated into the things that we're doing, it's very likely that we'll start, you might say, oh yeah, actually I need to optimize this AI API thing a little bit. How will I do this? And start poking at some of these features. So function calling is something to keep in mind. If you're trying to do APIs with ChatGPT, it seems like a way to get a little bit higher quality data, a little more optimized response. The other thing that they have in Flame AI is this convert feature, which is one very similar to how JSCodemod works. You basically pass it in a simple prompt. Like, you know, the other one that we did before was like convert JS to TS. This Flame AI convert has these little recipes. The one that I was playing with is called jQuery to JS. And this is the whole prompt. It's a little bit more in-depth than the JSCodemod prompts. I think Jamund put a lot of time into figuring out like how to get this thing to actually understand what it's trying to accomplish. It's really interesting. Anyone use jQuery like back in the day or anything? jQuery is so cool. And so it says like, this is roughly how we're going to think about converting jQuery to JS. But this like literally so impressive to me. When I ran this thing, okay, I have this little jQuery code up there. I know it's kind of small, but I said just replace all divs with spans. And then anything with a cow class, like make it grow. And I know it's like really random, just like some fake jQuery code. I wanted to see what would happen. So I ran the thing. And like, again, this like the docs like aren't even right. Like you have to go diving to figure out how to make anything work. But when it did work, it like actually like, it was so clever. It's like, oh, what are you gonna do with your cow elements? Well, you just call them make grow. So it's like, well, I'm gonna up the font size to 200%. It's like, it's just like, it just came up with it. It's not a real jQuery plugin. It just was like, this is probably what you're trying to do to make it grow. It actually blew my mind. And then replacing the divs with spans, like it is gonna do a horrible job, but it actually was like kind of doing that. So I was super impressed with this Flame AI tool. I think all the details about how they're working to make it easier to upgrade React Native looked really promising. But I don't use React Native, so I was more interested in some of these other features. And it made me think like, yeah, we're tiptoeing into the future. Like we're getting there. We're pretty close. So just to like recap some of the stuff we talked about, these I think are kind of the cutting edge tools for doing CodeMods in JavaScript. And you've got Flame AI, CodeMod Studio, and JSCodemod. They've all got some kind of different trade-offs and things, but they're all super cool. And definitely interesting. And I think that like let's be honest, like we're kind of living in the future. We're just like we're tiptoeing in. We're not quite there, but like you can see it. You can see where we will be able to just like update our code base with just a few lines of typing. And so what I feel like, honestly, as you are all, you know, hopefully coding and doing your thing, you will figure out how you can push things a little bit forward. Like when I go to all these repos, like they're all trash. Like you can update their docs to actually do the thing that the code does, and you will like make someone's life so much better. So I do think it's actually an inspiring time to be coding. Doing this little research project for this talk has made me a little bit inspired to be an engineer again, and I'm super happy to show off what I've been able to learn. Thank you so much.